Today, we're going to take a closer look at this cool certification, which is called the WISE certification. It's the first one that I can think of that was built for repair shops with the buy-in and input of not only the industry leaders that represent all of us, but also OEMs, warranty partners, and some of the other big names out there in the mobility space. Leading our discussion is going to be Michelle James, the VP of Strategic Industry Programs for CTIA, Jeremy Willis, the founder of Power Future Mobility, Marin Galvin, Director of Strategic Industry Programs for CTIA. After the presentation, we're going to have a panelist discussion, and we've got some experts lined up. Leading off, we've got Ryan Hicks, the VP of Business Development from Ralio. We've got Shay Kriplani, the CEO of Injured Gadgets. We have Sarah Kim, the co-founder of the E-Reuse Network and the E-Reuse Conference. We have Pedro Ferrer, the business owner with CPR Cell Phone Repair. Then we have Ben Warta, business owner and founder of Mobile Revive. We also want to participate in this discussion, which is why we've enabled the ability for you to ask questions throughout. So get those in. We'll answer them at the end of the presentation and facilitate a discussion. You can do that through the RingCentral app throughout this webinar, through chat, or various other outlets. Once it concludes, we'll go over them. With that, I'll stop talking, and I want to thank our presenters and panelists for coming today, for all of you for joining us, and I'll turn it over to Michelle to kick things off.
Great, thanks. Can you hear me okay? All right, great. I don't know why my name tag now says Jeremy Willis, but it does. So if somebody could fix that, that would be awesome. So can you see the screen share? Great. All right, I know we did the introductions already, so I'll flip through those. I'm really excited that the Service Central team has asked our team, the folks who have been working very hard and diligently behind the scenes for quite some time, and I'll walk you through sort of how we framed it inside CTIA. So as was mentioned, I work for CTIA, which is the Wireless Industry Trade Association, but many of you know me for years as a repair cheerleader. Was the producer of the Wireless Repair Expo since 2014. I feel like I've been on this mountain for many years. I've also been in the wireless industry at large for what feels like 100 years, since 1996. Have seen a lot of twists and turns in this industry, and I'm super, super passionate about the whole global wireless ecosystem as it relates to circular economy and how we actually focus and add integrity. So the whole goal that was set out many years ago now was really to add integrity around a really super, super important component of the overall wireless system, or a network, I should say. So as many of you know, I'll just start out with some stats. This is not going to be any new information to many of you on the line today, but 81% of the US population actually owns a smartphone. 66% will actually admit to having broken their device within the last year. And the consumer demand for industry recognized aftercare programs continues to grow. I will say, and Jeremy and I will talk about this towards the end of this session, in the very beginning, not that 2014 was the beginning, but it was the beginning of something that was going to be way bigger than anyone probably guessed or estimated. It was a lot of wild, wild west. So big picture is there's 175,000 damaged devices in the marketplace every day, all day. And we've got more than 20,000, it's probably well north of 20,000 technicians who are touching these devices all throughout the ecosystem. So one of the things that I was very passionate about, I wanted to make sure that we had a whole collaboration represented by everyone in the wireless ecosystem to address the common challenge of how do we support the aftercare of devices. We needed the OEM at the table. At the end of the day, they have to be at the table to help give some advice, even in an aftermarket or aftercare scenario that's not necessarily handled under their own brand. I wanted them at the table to give some guidance to other options and other alternatives that consumers we knew were going to continue to seek in great numbers. So as pretty as this slide is, in getting 53 companies to actually work together between the OEMs, all of the carriers, their 3PLs, the retailers, the folks that are deep within the supply chain that even consumers don't see at all on the front end, to getting them all to the table to actually decide what is it that we wanted to be in terms of representing best practices for the aftercare of devices. Looks really easy on a slide. I will tell you that it was not for the faint of heart. Definitely was very passionate for many of the companies who came to the table. The whole goal, and this is why it made sense for it to sort of sit underneath the CTIA umbrella, because the whole goal of the trade association is to make sure that if we do have common challenges across the industry, that we're addressing them together. And we have voluntary programs, and I'll sort of go into some of the things that CTIA does that a lot of people may or may not know that they've been doing for more than 20 years to help get devices onto networks, for example. So bottom line is the whole program goal was to establish, the question was, could we establish industry recognized standards that could be applied across the entire wireless industry? And could we create consistency for that customer experience, whether it's deep in the supply chain, so the depots out there that were, again, back in early days, as many of you know, a lot of those repairs were done for mail-in. For folks that were on the front end who were brave enough to have retail locations, like many of you that are on the phone today, and then those who actually went after the franchise model to create a consistent customer experience under a brand. And what could we do to help increase the level of baseline knowledge for technicians, so that we created some sort of integrity for all of the options that consumers needed and wanted to make choices in the marketplace. So a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, not gonna lie, but 53 companies with equal passion, with equal charters, if you will, in terms of their focus on how they handle the aftercare of devices, have come together with more than, it says 180, I think we're up to about 200 different unique participants across our overall program. We call this program inside CTIA Reverse Logistics and Service Quality. In the consumer world, we obviously call it repair. That's what consumers attach to. They wouldn't actually necessarily attach to reverse logistics, but deep in the supply chain, it's often called reverse logistics. Inside carrier community, it's reverse logistics, as well as for the OEM. In addition to the front end, consumer-facing retail locations would call it repair. So again, this is the group of people who actually came together and decided what is it that we want to prioritize, what kind of oversight did we need, what kind of guidance did we want to provide, how we established those best practices that then became, in some cases, curriculum. It became guidance for service facilities, for example. So even though today we're going to focus a lot on the retail consumer-facing side, there's a lot of things that also were kind of wild, wild west as it related to the supply chain. So the depots, it was amazing to me that we never, as an industry, came together and decided, do we need to be ISO 9001, TL 9000? What was the standard that those facilities that were touching even those mail-in repairs back in the early days, what standard did we want to follow? Do we need to be R2? So that a group came together and actually decided that. We also had grading of devices that was all over the board. And I would always say, well, how do you know that it's an A+++, all sorts of crazy marketing terms out there for that, really weren't grounded in engineering. So could we actually define as an industry, what is a grade A device as it comes back through the secondary channel? So it was a group that decided that let's actually come together and make those decisions. And then we moved into the more consumer-facing side, which is where we'll spend most of our time today. But these are the companies that came together, very passionate, just as passionate as a retail end. You can see they're companies of all different sizes. This was not about getting just the big guys together, but some of the big guys that were touching the marketplace in a really major way, we had to have them at the table to have their input and get some of their help in making sure that we were following things that we knew could be adopted across the marketplace. And in addition to our leadership team, we also have the associate members, which are just as important and just as active as our leadership team. As a matter of fact, they're almost more active, because these guys are the guys who have dedicated bandwidth and people to create whatever it is that we decided. And this is not CTIA's driven documents. They'll have CTIA's name on it. We'll make sure that they get published and are available to the industry. But these are actually authored by all the companies that you actually see on the screen here today. So a big picture, CTIA for more than 20 years. So when a brand new device comes into the marketplace, we have working group programs that have that are deep with engineers. I think we have about 1,500 people that participate in across all of the gray box areas that you see on the screen. And these are the guys who actually work together on how we bring brand new product to North American operators. Every OEM participates in this. Labs participate, global labs. We have 108 different global labs across the world who participate in testing all of these various aspects of a new product as it goes onto a network. So lots of behind the scenes go into play for that. For us, you can see the green. This is where we fall, and now we have a seat at the overall wireless ecosystem, just as important as a brand new product that comes to market, how we make sure that we support it with programs that can help in the reverse logistics and service quality program. So when we set up our leadership council, which is basically chaired by the CTIA team, we have grading scales, like I mentioned. Again, that we're not going to talk a lot about that today, but I will tell you that document was published and has been down a year and a half ago, and it has been downloaded hundreds of times across the globe, even by facilities who are doing automated grading with machine learning, are actually calibrating that machinery to our established grading scales. We're not policing that. Actually, we're not policing anything. We're just creating best practices and certification pathways for those who actually want to follow as voluntary programs. So I think that has been downloaded more than 800 times across the globe since it was deployed. And then we have our technician training, which we'll spend a lot of time talking about today relative to the curriculum. This was not an easy task to set up what was the baseline knowledge that would lead to certification for technicians. And then service facilities, as I mentioned, that's sort of the depots, that's the back end. We did just certify our first depot. This program was also recently launched. And our Retail Mobile Service Excellence Working Group, this is really what we're talking about in terms of the retail storefronts. Again, retailers of all sizes. And then parts validation, that's a long on-ramp. That working group, quite frankly, is really focused on how can we as an industry create a lithium ion battery traceability program that can be adopted globally. The OEMs are working really hard at that in order to, doesn't mean you can't have an OEM battery in the device, but it gives a system that instead of opening the device, you would know if it was an OEM battery inside. Based on a globally recognized traceability program. All right, so that's the overall, all 5 working groups. The grading scales, as I mentioned, was released February 2019. Our service facility was just released this middle of last year. And then what we're gonna spend a lot of time talking about today, so for the consumer-facing side of our program, whereas the other 2 programs are branded CTIA because they're sort of deep in the supply chain, these are forward-facing, and so we wanted to have a brand that had some resonance. So we have named this WISE, hence WISE certification, and it stands for Wireless Industry Service Excellence. We just recently, for both of these programs, there's a technician certification program and a retail location certification program. Both of these were launched in Q4 of 2019, and we're in the process of onboarding, which we'll talk a little bit about today. This is a fully branded program where we have some marketing elements that are made available to our retail locations as well as technicians. All technicians receive a certificate of completion, and then Marin is going to actually talk through the actual onboarding of the curriculum and sort of what that looks like, and what to experience for the technicians who actually come through the program. But we do have markers also for stores who want to be identified as a WISE certified provider or retail location. So just want to give you an essence of what the brand look and feel is. And with that, so we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive. Marin is going to walk us through what it means to become a WISE certified technician and what is involved. We learned a lot about learning management systems, probably way more than I thought I would ever know in my life. And so, Marin, I'll hand off to you and let you sort of walk us through how the platform works.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Just making sure I got off mute there. I'm really excited I get the opportunity to preview the WISE certification platform with you all and take you all through what it means to earn your WISE certification, whether you're a technician or a retail store. So the WISE certification platform, as Michelle just alluded, is a learning management system. It delivers training and certification to our WISE members. It is home to both our WISE technician certification as well as our retail store certification programs. In addition to these programs, there's also a couple other learning opportunities that we make available to anyone that's participating. One of the recent programs, or I should say courses that we rolled out, is a Mobile 101. It is not a certification program, but it's just an additional opportunity for a technician to learn more about how wireless technology works. It is a free self-coursed preview of things like Spectrum, as well as it explains how we move from 2G to 5G. Also on the platform, as Michelle talked a little bit about before, and we won't get into it, we do have our grading scales document posted and available for our members. Once again, it's not a certification program, but it's just an additional learning opportunity for those that are on the platform. Currently, we have 6,000 members on the platform today, and that number grows by the hour. If you guys start to hear my email go off, that's minute by minute, I get a new notification of a new user registration. From those 6,000 users, there's over 40 members of the industry that has their employees participating in the program. In the retail world, that's folks like Injured Gadgets, CPR, Batteries Plus, iFixture, Idaho Repair, Spokane Repair, Mobile Clinic. We also have technicians from larger remanufacturing and repair depots, such as AGI Repair, Ingram Micro, and Clover Technologies. Let me go ahead to the next slide. So in order for a retail store to be eligible for WISE certification, there is a prerequisite that a retail location has to have at least one level 2 technician on site during posted business hours. So in order for your technicians to receive level 2 certification, they need to go through a 2-step certification process. This process is very similar to the process of getting your driver's license. So we're all familiar that you go to the DMV, you must take an online test, and once you pass your online exam, you're then eligible for behind the wheel or an actual demonstration of your skill set to drive a car. Well, I promise that WISE certification is not as miserable as going to the DMV. You saw the platform, so it's very fun and exciting. So technicians come to the platform, they enroll as new users. Once they are approved, they're able to enroll directly in level 1 certification. The level 1 certification program is a knowledge exam that covers everything from the anatomy of a device, wireless technology as an overview, battery handling and safety. And in order to prep for that exam, they're also provided with a study guide. The industry members that Michelle walked through earlier all helps to develop this study guide. It's a 100-page document that I promise is a valuable resource to everything and anything that is repair regardless of the work environment that the technician is in. Covers both on-demand environments as well as in-store environments. Once the technician has reviewed this exam, and they're allowed to keep that exam, that study guide for the length of time. They can download it, they can print it, it's their copy to keep. Once they've reviewed it and they feel ready, they're ready to take the online exam. That exam is a 65 question test. There is true, false, multiple choice, as well as several drag and drop matching questions where you have to match labels of the phone to the correct component. Technicians must receive a 70% passing rate or higher in order to qualify for level 1 certification. They have 2 attempts, and the test takes about average of 40 minutes. They get 90 minutes to complete the exam. We see texts come through as quickly as take it in 15 minutes. We see texts take about an hour. It really just depends, but 90 minutes seems to be plenty of time for the technicians to come through. The technician exam questions do mirror the study guide, so it is really important that the technician take the time to study in advance. To give you guys a little bit of a flavor of some of the questions, we ask process questions. So we all know that battery handling is a very hot subject in our industry. So we have questions like, when replacing lithium batteries, technicians should, and it walks through certain steps that a technician either should take or shouldn't take as part of handling lithium-ion batteries. We also have questions on the proper use of tools, such as which of the following is an effective adhesive remover, solvents and alcohol being the correct answer. And then as an example of a true or false question, we also do get into recycler requirements. So true, false, all downstream recyclers are R2 certified. That is false. You must be sure you're working with an R2 certified recycler when recycling, especially lithium-ion batteries. Once your technician has come through and taken the online exam, they are then eligible for level 2 certification. Level 2 certification is a hands-on training that is facilitated outside the platform and is delivered via CTIA authorized facilitators. This curriculum is the behind the wheel portion of getting your driver's license. So whether it be through an online delivery training or in-person hands-on with the facilitator, the technician is asked to perform practical skills on 4 separate devices. These skills could range from battery replacement to screen replacement to small component replacement and NFF scenarios. So where level 1 was testing, just basically qualifying the technician to resolve issues without opening the device, level 2 is requiring the technician to actually open and replace plug-and-place components on the device. Before being tested, the technician is given a training curriculum. It's a bank of about 10 different repair scenarios. And then on the day of the in-person or online training, that facilitator will choose 4 of the 10 repair scenarios at random and approved by both the facilitator and CTIA, and will administer the exam or in-person hands-on training to the technician. Assuming that the technician gets an 80% score, and that score is judged based on the proper use of tools, the time it takes to complete the repair, and also any kind of observations of the completion of the repair, that technician is then level 2 certified. We can then go to the next slide. So once your technicians have come through and obtained level 2 certification, your retail store is now eligible for WISE Authorized Service Provider Certification. Service Provider Certification is specific to the organization's repair environment. So we certify both retail organizations. These are brick and mortar or store within a store places where customer-facing transactions are conducted. This is the customer coming to your organization for a resolution. Kiosks and carts are not eligible for this certification, nor are they eligible for any types of qualifications for WISE service provider certification. If your organization is remote, meaning that they deploy technicians to a customer's home or a place of a customer's choosing where a repair can safely be performed, your organization does qualify for WISE retail certification. And of course, if your organization is a hybrid between the two, you would be classified as a retail and remote organization, and you are eligible for the program as well. We ask that before folks come through and have their retail store certified, they understand a definition of their business and the environment of repair that their business operates in, because this does change the requirements that they will be audited to when they come through the application and audit process as a part of the program. When you are confident you know what your business qualifies for, and you've read through the Authorized Service Provider Certification Program documents, you can then reach out to application@wisecertification.com. From there, you will be provided with an application. It's a very straightforward application. It asks questions pertaining to contact information of your retail store, your manager or franchise owner's contact information, years in business, what type of OEM or carrier authorizations you have. So it takes, I would say it takes less than 30 minutes to kind of go through the form, and that's probably overestimating the time. It is important that each store fill out the application themselves. That is to say that if you own several stores or you are a franchise, you cannot fill out one application for your franchise or for your set of stores. Each independent brick and mortar or standalone store must fill out an application specific to their business. And that just has to do with the audit process and making sure it's a consistent representation of the requirements, regardless of the franchise or from the business entity's standpoint. It's also important to review the requirements in the certification document so you understand what kind of document evidence is going to be required as part of the audit. In part of the application process, you will be asked to upload a copy of your terms of service that you provide to your customers, a copy of your insurance, a copy of your business license, and this is to help ensure that the audit process runs smoothly. If everything is provided at this first time as part of the application and the auditor doesn't have to come back to address any inefficiencies, the audit can take from anywhere from 5 to 7 days. And that also, I'll caveat that depends on the volume at the time that they're conducting the audit, but it is straightforward unless, of course, there are deficiencies or they're missing information. Assuming that all the information has been provided, your retail store would obtain certification. Michelle alluded earlier and showed some of the marketing, but any authorized service provider would be provided with the WISE logo. This logo can be showcased on all storefronts, clothing, vehicles to help promote the certification. Additionally, we're very excited that any WISE authorized service provider would also be included in our online directory. This directory is at wisecertification.com and is a national, one day soon to be global certification directory that provides all the information of all WISE certified stores that are included in our program. And with that, I will pass it over to Jeremy to talk through about WISE in the community today.
All right, thank you, Corinne. And as many people know, I can't talk and sit down. So if I walk off the screen, somebody like holler at me. All right, so my name is Jeremy Willis. My company is Power Future Mobility, PFM, as a lot of you know. I work closely with CTIA and the WISE certification team in the audit process, in the marketing process, education, and some other areas. So I'm just kind of here today to kind of bring this back to kind of where we all started as an industry and kind of at the street level. I stumbled into this industry back in like 2010, 2011, like a lot of you on this call, by happy accident. I just got lucky, and a lot of you guys did too. You well, you weren't lucky. You broke your phone or you broke your iPod. And you learned how to fix it by visiting a company that sold parts. A lot of you found the company I was a part of for a long time, E-Type Parts. And what was interesting was a lot of you became repeat customers. And what we started to see from there was you became the first repair shops. So everybody's got the same story. You know, I learned how to fix my iPod, then my wife went off to work and told somebody. Next thing you know, everybody's hitting me up to fix their stuff. And so I had the fortunate task's the right word, but I got to kind of walk alongside a lot of you guys, the first ones that started opening repair shops, and spent a lot of time out in the field in those days, 2012 to 2015, 2016, and got to sit down with a lot of you guys early on. We would take cinematographer out on the field with us and actually interview repair shops, try to tell their stories to the rest of the industry. We worked hard to build an online community to give people a place to share ideas and network. And then Michelle came along and built the Wireless Repair Expo and gave us a place to actually get together in person. And at a lot of those events, the Wireless Repair Expo and the Wireless Repair Roundup, I had the opportunity to host a lot of panels with repair shops and technicians and speak at some of those events. And really, between those events and those opportunities, what was going online back in those days, what we were actually able to capture on film, going around and talking to repair shops and just, you know, hanging out with you guys in your shop late at night sometimes. The conversation 90% of the time went to, man, if there just was some sort of blueprint, some sort of instructions, some sort of standard, like there's just got to be something out there that, because I want to be the best. Like I want to be the best shop, and I want to be different than the guy down the street. So like, is there anything, you know? And it always came back to that. And you go back and look at a lot of these old videos. I ain't lying. I'm not over exaggerating. Like every conversation in these panels and these interviews and these conversations late at night, it always came down to, man, if we just had like a certificate or a seal of approval. So, you know, I amongst some other people, we did our best in those days to be an advocate for the repair shops in this growing community. You know, one of my favorite things that I still have today is my agenda from the 2012 CES show. This is the first year I went in this industry. And, you know, it was really hard to get, it was kind of a failure. Like nobody really wanted to talk to us. Like everyone's kind of like, what are you, these repair shops? I don't know. You know, and so we kind of kept moving forward. And then Michelle, obviously the Wireless Repair Expo helped us a lot, and us kind of getting opportunities to sit and talk and share ideas and not be afraid that this guy's competition or that guy's competition. And we had amazing, amazing operators of all shapes and sizes out there, from towns of 4,000 to cities, major metropolitan areas of, you know, 10 million. And there was guys with one shop. There was people with regional, you know, 5 or 6 stores in their market. And then the franchises were out there. But what was stopping the wireless industry from really taking us serious was it was so fragmented. You know, there wasn't a seal of approval. So then we come back to, you know, there was no standard. There was really no blueprint. There was no guideline. Even for the vendors and maybe the carriers and other people on the outside looking into what our little Wild West world was doing, there was really no clear path to how to work with this industry. So finally, you know, we got motivated one day. Michelle put together a group of 12 individuals from the industry, from the Wild West version of this industry. We had representation from retailers, both franchise and independent. We had some of the suppliers at that time, some of the depots. RepairQ was at that table. We met down in Dallas, and it was really just a group of us, ragtag, for the lack of better terms, members of that Wild West community. And luckily, CTIA caught wind of what we were doing and asked to be a part of it. And man, it's been an amazing experience since then, I can tell you, because I've had the opportunity to be a part of it the whole time. And from that meeting in Dallas, CTIA invited that same group of people to Samsung in New York, to the home office, one of their home offices. And there we were sitting in a room with OEMs and carriers and insurance providers presenting our industry to them, our side of the industry to them. And I tell you, it was kind of scary. I mean, all of us talked in the days leading up to that. And it's like, you know, it was a little intimidating. But they sat there and they listened. They let us present. They didn't run that meeting. We did. And that was, you know, really eye-opening that they are trying to figure out how to work within this system. You know, they are looking at this saying, well, they already built it, so how do we bridge the gap? From that meeting, we went, most of that same group, and then the outside world kind of got larger. We went to Washington, D.C. next, to CTIA headquarters, and it's been an amazing ride since then. Michelle said 53 companies have been involved in this. And, you know, for a long time, people thought it was crazy. I definitely had a lot of those conversations. But it is where it is today because all those companies actually got in rooms together face-to-face. We had a lot of calls. We have calls every 2 weeks, once a month, sometimes even frequently. We meet every quarter face-to-face at least. And everything that gets decided for this certification, for this standard for our industry is done collaboratively. This wasn't built by one major company that you might have in mind. Like, oh, well, this is their agenda. This was not built by CTIA. This was built by members of the bigger wireless ecosystem and also our peers in the repair industry, you know, retailers, technicians that played a big role. So it has been a collaborative effort, and it's been tough at times, and there's been disagreements, but we've gotten through it, and I'm really proud of where we are today. And, you know, as frustrating as my role can be sometimes in wanting to move things faster, we have to decide things by a group. So there might be something that comes up today that's like, man, that's going to be great. That actually would make this a lot better. Well, I have to wait 2 weeks until we have our next working group call so we can all discuss it as a group and get feedback and make a decision. So, you know, that being said, we have progressed as an industry along the way. Our industry looks a lot different than it did a couple years ago. Partnerships outside of standards have been blossoming. People are finding ways to connect the dots together from their organization to our industry. But there's still people left out. There's still populations of 4,000 to 10 million that have amazing operators, that have amazing technicians, that still need that seal of approval. And there's still people on the outside looking in, whether they be a vendor that's looking to sell a product in a repair shop, whether it's a larger organization looking for an authorized service network, whether it's a consumer looking for the right place to get their devices fixed, to you as a repair shop wanting to be better than the guy down the street. So why certifications for everybody? And this is the seal of approval we've been looking for, the standard that we've been working so hard to build and waiting for. And I can tell you, I wish I could talk more direct about it, but there's a lot of really great conversations going on right now with people on the outside looking in about using WISE certification as a vetting mechanism for approval to sell their product, to be a part of their authorized network. And they're really excited about it. Like they're genuinely excited. We're just working out some details, but I can honestly tell you, and I confidently tell you, you're going to start seeing when you apply for programs in the industry as it relates to providing service or selling a product in your store, you're going to start seeing in that application process WISE certification number. And that WISE certification number is going to be a unique number that you'll get once you pass retail certification that you can put on that application. And then when that company goes to review your application, that's going to either pass you through as a blanket approval or it will put you in a high standing in the approval process. So it's really exciting. I wish I could speak more directly to some of those today, but I kind of don't want to take the thunder out of those companies. I'd like for them to be able to make that announcement because they are excited to be involved in the program. And so, kind of my role, because of that, my role is really to help CTIA protect the integrity of this certification, because as we do talk to these people on the outside looking in, and we're basically giving them a commitment and promise that we build something that will satisfy their needs for what they want to engage with their customer, whether it be through sales or service. We have a promise to them that we're going to uphold that. And then we have a promise to the repair shops and technicians as well that, this is going to mean something for you. So I wake up every day, with the goal in mind to help CTIA protect the integrity of this program is my role with working with them. And then, just before I stop blabbering here, I want you guys to just take a look. If you have a repair shop or if you're a technician, I want you guys to take a look at the role you're playing today in your community amidst this crisis that we're in. There's a lot of folks not operating. There's a lot of people a lot of organizations and companies that people depend on for connectivity and service that are not open. But if you're a repair shop or technician and you're on this call today, most of you are open because your state determined that you're essential, or your city determined that you're essential. And I just want to say thank you. And, you guys are doing a tremendous job out there. It's incredible to me, the stuff that I'm seeing that you guys are doing to help with e-learning in communities and to help with the essential businesses in the communities, with the hospitals and the first responders. The really cool, innovative stuff I've seen you guys doing with the restaurants that are still open, that are trying to manage curbside. It's crazy. You guys are doing amazing things. And the most inspiring part of it is I get to fortunately steal some of your time, 2 or 3 of you that own repair shops every day, just to check in. And the most inspiring part's been what you guys are doing with your employees and your staff. Some of the stories that I've heard it gives me a little bit of something to keep going too. It's been really cool to hear how you guys are keeping your businesses alive. So in closing, for me, if you take anything away from this today, as we look at this directory, and you'll see what it's going to look like as your shop appears on WISE certification as you become certified. The biggest takeaway for me, and to wrap up everywhere we've been on this journey, the proud moment is repair shops are now part of wireless. So if you're out there and you have a repair shop and you've been fighting at this game for a long time, not fighting, but you've been going along trying to find out what's next. What WISE certification means the most to me is that we finally are part of wireless, and the wireless industry recognizes us as part of their ecosystem. So thank you guys for giving me a second to talk today. Would you like me to discuss the next slide?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one quick thing here. So while the directory is not actually live yet, I know there was maybe a couple questions about it. It is, I can't tell you the amount of work that has gone on behind the scenes and the work that it's taken to populate this directory, and it will be launched here shortly. Rest assured, it is absolutely being populated. And we'll send out an alert as soon as the directory is live, but it is coming soon. Lots going on in the behind the scenes on that. And then Jeremy, I'm going to flip back to you to do the last slide. Here we go. This is how we engage.
All right. So once again, thanks guys for listening. Looking forward to pitching this back to Matt. But we would like to offer everybody, all the participants today that's on the call, $150 off of their level 1 technician certification. So you go to wisecertification.com. It's pretty straightforward on there. You click that you're looking for the technician certification, and it'll take you to a page that will help you get to the next steps on that, which would be to download the study guide first and prepare for the test. So use the code BWISE2 and you get $150 off, I think till the, what, we're talking about kind of till the end of the month?
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. So hopefully that helps everybody out a little bit during all this. And I will kick it back to you, man.
Cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I know the WISE certification has been something we've all been following for a while now, and it's exciting to see it finally be launched live and to get this overview, directly from you folks who obviously worked really hard to develop it and to produce a system that, as we established, the community really, really needs. So now I think, in our last couple of minutes here, in the next 10 minutes, we want to go towards some of the audience questions and some questions that I came up with. So if you're viewing the webinar as a participant, just go ahead and utilize the Q&A feature on the RingCentral app. Basically, is a formatted way for us to see your questions, respond to them, and document them for everybody else. So I'll get started. First, we have a question from Pamela that's basically asking, I think this goes to the CTIA team, will this basically standardize a certification for cell phone and tablet devices? And does it encompass any like IoT device? And then also there's some questions about the cost therein, if it's tiered or varied, and how long it's valid for.
Yeah, those are all really good questions. So I'll take a stab and then Marin, jump in if I've missed something. But in terms of the program today, the scope is smartphones. I will say that we have been asked to broaden the scope, but we want to make sure that we have this locked and loaded in terms of launch before we entertain growing the scope. But we have been asked to grow the scope to other devices and including IoT. So, but for today, how this program was, I think going to the next level will be easier now that we've sort of cut our teeth on smartphones, but the scope today is smartphones. And then the second part of the question was what, around cost?
Yeah.
Relative to just in general, or?
Yeah, like what is the cost? If it's just smartphones, what is the cost to get certified to repair?
Yeah, so it's $450 for the technician, and $400 for a single retail location. So again, there's a requirement that you have at least one level 2 technician on staff at all times in a retail location in order to seek retail certification. So with today, it's $300 because we have $150 off, but typically it's $450 for a technician for the certification. Level 2 pricing has not been released yet, but I think it will be soon. Correct me if I'm wrong, Marin and Jeremy. That number is being worked up. There's a little bit more involved in that, and we should have that out here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, there's a challenge with it having to kind of go virtual with everything going on. So there's been some rethinking.
Yeah, so that was originally set up in Classroom, and that may or may not be viable in the next 60 days. So yeah, so that is to be announced shortly. Got it.
That's great. Well, I want to bring in our panel discussion, who's been waiting very patiently, and give you guys all an opportunity to chime in. So I'm going to start mixing in questions for the panel, for CTIA, and from the audience. And by all means, if anybody feels like they can add something as a panelist, definitely speak up. My first question for the panel, though, is really a high-level view is how can we advance our industry? And how would you frame that up in consideration of the WISE certification? I think just connect the dots here. What is WISE doing to advance the industry?
Well, I'll take a quick stab and then definitely others jump in. But I think from recognizing this as an important segment of the overall wireless ecosystem was really step one, and a really big step one, to get the alignment that we did to get started to, in some cases, I'm going to say from 2014 to just getting it recognized that it was legitimate. And there are really great people that have been touching these devices for many years, but to get that recognized on, I think, on a grander scale or a national and potentially globally, globally recognized scale was really step one. And then to sort of diffuse some of the challenges relative to OEM, non-OEM, sort of all of the sort of craziness, and I totally understand what happens on the back end. I understand everybody protecting whatever it is that they're protecting inside the supply chain. But really, if the supply chain can't trust itself, how can consumers trust the process? So but first we had to start with the supply chain. How do we get everybody to the table and recognize this is legitimate, regardless of what parts and pieces are being used to execute it for the consumer, whether it's deep in the supply chain in a depot, or it's in a front end retail, or it's a technician who goes out and is deployed to a consumer face to face. There should be some recognition for what is expected of the industry as a viable industry segment. And I think we went a long way in a year and a half, and that now being pretty recognized across the board. And where we go next is, now I would like to share with consumers, here's what you can expect, because now the industry has actually put definition around it. Not going to police it, but if the whole ocean sort of rises and the bar is at least met on the industry recognized baseline standard, does not make you OEM certified. So if you are here and you want to be specialty in XYZ OEM, or you want to be carrier grade recognized over here, those requirements sort of sit on top of that, but at least gets everybody has the same opportunity, if you will, to be recognized as meeting that industry baseline standard. And it was set by the industry. This isn't one company. We're not selling anything. I mean, obviously we have a certification program. We're a nonprofit. It's a cost recovery program. But at the end of the day, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I don't have parts. I don't have tools. I don't have stores. We're actually just bringing the industry together to convene so we can actually establish what the standard should be.
Yeah, I mean, by you saying the word trust, that's what we want. We want to be held accountable. We want to show that we have great technicians and great operators, and have, eventually have access to tools, diagnostics, schematics, all that kind of stuff. That's what we're all craving, to go out there, show that we have the footprint, we can work together. We want to earn that trust. And that's what, we're looking forward to in this certification.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jeremy said it best. I mean, he said that back in the E-Tech days when he would go around and visit repair shops, one of their biggest qualms was that there was no standardization. And I mean, even now when I talk to repair shops, one of their biggest complaints is that, hey, you know what, the guy down the street is charging $30 for this repair. They use shoddy parts. They don't put screws back in. So I think the WISE certification kind of brings some legitimacy to our industry that's really been lacking for the past few years. And I mean, for the people who missed the beginning of it, Michelle actually posted the amount of companies that were involved with this. And it wasn't just the big OEMs and the big carriers. I mean, it included companies like Gadgets and iFix Your Eye and iFix Omaha, and obviously the bigger chains like CPR and YouBreak iFix. But it wasn't just, hey, here's the big guys, let's get their opinion. It included a lot of smaller companies too. And that's what I think really helped build WISE out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think one follow-up question too to throw out there. Sorry, Sarah, to interrupt, but like is why is now, right? I think we've all seen this problem repeatedly. I remember talking about it back in 2015. We've got these low barriers to entry in the industry. But why, if I'm a shop, why do I want to get certified now versus saying, well, I'll just wait and see?
Jeremy, you want to take that one?
Well, I take this as a y'all got a little extra time right now, so that's one good reason. I mean that as funny as possible. I mean, if you just kind of take back and take a step back and look at what's going on in the industry the last year or two, people that in organizations that have some level of standardization beyond every location are, starting to get cooperative agreements with authorizations. We see that through consolidation, or we see that through authorized networks. That's not to say that if you're not part of that organization, you're just left out. We have some looming pain points in the industry today that all of us are dealing with, and I think that a standard and a certification could solve for a lot of those pain points. And, really, you should want it for yourself because it does make you a step above everyone else. So I think, the fact that it exists would give me some sense of urgency to take the right steps to get through this process and to get in the directory and to be there as, the other side of WISE is there's a team, going out and promoting this program to the people on the outside looking in. So I would want to be a part of this as people start to come in and take a look.
And if I could add to that, I mean, now more than ever, the big OEMs and commercial accounts and insurance companies, they are seeing that they need us more than ever. I mean, when things like this happen, it's happened in the past with big companies that they had an emergency and their only option was doing it themselves. And they learned the hard way that it cost them billions and horrible PR. So,
yeah, I think I want to bring Ryan. I want to ask you to comment a little bit. Can you give us some perspective through Rally on what this might mean on the consumer side, right? I think we all understand how repair shops might perceive this, but what about the consumer?
Yeah, great question. My name is Ryan. I'm with Rallyo. We're a social media technology platform and reputation management system. And I think everybody here drilled it. It boils down to really two things. It boils down to trust and it boils down to social proof if you're looking at the consumer side. So one way to build trust is obviously through positive reviews, and one way to build social proof is through that. But that is exactly what the certification does, because it was discussed that there's been no standardization. So building trust through the certification is absolutely critical in the sense that it gives just consumer trust. But if you look at from the big picture, we have 17 million people in unemployment. We have a really dire situation that has happened, but people are more willing now than ever to support local businesses. So two specific pieces of advice is, number one, as we look at social media, number one, having a localized voice on your social media pages, authentic voice, showcasing your people, sharing useful information. There's two types of ways you use social media. That's to educate or to inform. And these are channels where we can promote the message of what exactly WISE is and how it builds more trust from the consumer side. Because I want to do business as a consumer with folks where if I go get my screen fixed or whatever it is, I want to make sure that I have the best quality experience. Thus, it's going to drive the positive review loop and all the rest. So just a couple of quick points.
Great.
I'm going to piggyback off that if I can. Obviously, a lot of this is based around the customer and consumer experience in your stores. There's a lot of competition anymore as this industry has developed over the years. And bringing that legitimacy to your storefront. A lot of comments I'm seeing here that, we're just kind of, this is going to be something that people have to pay for just to try to get people in the door. And how are they going to know what exactly WISE is? Obviously, that's going to take some educating of your customer in your store. But obviously with CTIA behind this, they should be able to, promote that at a rapid pace. With having the continuing education with your technicians so they are up to date on the latest technology is obviously going to bring some peace of mind to the people that you see come into your business to spend their money.
Yeah. Sarah, I have a question for you from Wesley Fraga. How can small repair shops get into other aspects of repair, and kind of join some of the bigger companies that are playing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Certification definitely can help in that. It provides structure, it provides accountability. The shops that will become certified often, see continual improvement as they're growing. That allows them then to reach out to businesses and say, hey, we have this structure in place. This is exactly how we do things. If you have, questions, it answers a lot of the questions that customers will have. So businesses will feel more comfortable, as they're reviewing your proposal and be more willing to partner with you. Now, that being said, certification is always an investment, right? So there's always a cost up front for any sort of certification, no matter what industry you're in. But if you can measure what that return will be with additional customers after you experience that, that's when you really find the value of it. So you always have to weigh those options, but ultimately what I've seen throughout the years of working in my certification background is that value comes. And yes, it's an upfront cost, and sometimes it's unknown on what exactly it's going to bring you. But at the end of the day, you can really see that return in your investment.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, I think, there's a lot of question, and we've seen it all over, right? It's like, why should I spend even $350 on a type of certification? I think that the CTIA team got ahead of that question in a lot of ways. If you consider the access to being listed in a respected directory for consumers to trust, right? That they would know they're getting a certain minimum level of service. Like Michelle said, we're going to raise the bar. And if you can run the math on how much you would otherwise pay for a customer and just what type of opportunities that might open up. But I guess this is a question just for everybody, including the CTIA team, is like, let's talk about that price point and why it shouldn't scare people away from just writing off this whole thing, right out of the gate.
I mean, if it's a bridge for us to have some kind of communication with these OEMs and with the bigger companies and eventually, access to schematics and tools, to their training, to their work, that's what it all comes down to.
Yeah, I think Sarah said it well. I mean, there's a price for any certification. There's always an investment in getting yourself to the next level.
Yeah. I mean, I think Sarah.
Yeah, measuring those though. Figure out what it is you're going to need to exactly that's going to be your investment, and then decide exactly what you expect to get out of it, and figure out what that really is, and be able to tie them back to one another. That is where it becomes really valuable for people.
Yeah. I
mean, I know personally, I've been, when I first started doing repair back out of high school in 2008, 2009. I was looking at certifications that were in the $1,500 to $2,000 range, right? And it was insane. It was entirely cost prohibitive to me. So, I think that a price point of $400 or $350 to $450 is much more attainable for an independent little guy. But I do want to ask, the team here, like. If you're looking at a regional chain, right? You've been super successful. You've got a ton of businesses under your belt. You want to get every location certified to get on there. That can get pretty expensive pretty quick, right? At 12 stores, I think Justin Finelli, had a great question. It was, you've got 12 stores at $450 and $400 per store. Isn't that, over 10 grand? And what is there any kind of commentary that we should know as we consider that problem?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say to that is that we are working with folks who do have multiple locations, right? So we have everything from the franchise operators or organizations like the CPRs, the U-Brakes, and the Batteries Plus. And, big shout out to the Batteries Plus team. They're with 700 stores. They were one of the first, actually the first, who jumped on board nationwide as they were part of the original program, as well as some of our independent guys who were part of the program. So, our commitment is to work with folks who do have multiple locations. So we kind of have the independent guy, the single store operator that has maybe 1 or 2 locations. And then we have people who have 10 or 12, like Justin, and others who have, 50 or 60, for example. And then we've got the larger franchise organizations. Our goal is to make sure that like we work with everyone as best we can based on the delivery of the program without diluting the quality of the actual program being delivered. And so, you know, again, I would have Justin reach out to me directly and figure out how we can work together on getting all 12 stores up, you know, into the program.
Yeah.
And that's a huge benefit for any industry with a certification, because not all certifications are as open and are developed in this way. So, you know, there are tons of certifications out there that span all the industries, ISO certifications, et cetera, but the industry itself doesn't get to move the ball forward and be part of the process to develop it. So this is a huge opportunity for everybody to be a part of this process and feedback information. And, you know, standards get upgraded all the time. And so this is version 1, and I think it's fantastic, but don't forget, there'll probably be revisions. And so your information, I mean, your input is going to be valuable. I hope it's okay for me to say that.
No, it is absolutely
Jeremy and
valuable.
Michelle.
Yep. And the good thing about, you know, having rolling updates and this being a very connected group of 53 companies, and I will say there were people who thought they were competitors and then are now friends, and or found different ways to work with each other, because once you sit at the table with a common goal, in this case to develop the standard, develop the curriculum, to also develop the delivery mechanism of it, and they also in many cases have ownership in the relationship in the room, because they're also buyer-seller relationships, right? So because we do have the rolling updates as we move through implementation this year, next year, and hopefully forever, especially if we continue to grow the scope of the program, we have an opportunity to have everybody at the table all the time. So problems or challenges can be addressed in more real time with the actual live input from the market. So,
yeah,
I mean, that's been really, it's been painful, but super exciting to see that actually come together.
That decision was really made because I mean, also it's a store level certification. So it's not a brand level certification. It is, you know, I don't even know anymore. I've been like 3,000 or more repair shops in my life. And even if you have 12 stores, I know for a fact that, and this isn't negative, but I know for a fact that not all 12 of your stores are the same. And you might have a couple that are mall kiosks even. And like, you know, so you're being certified at each particular store level. It's not just a blanket approval if you come in and say, I have 5 locations.
Yep.
That helps clarify the store level at all.
Yeah, Jeremy, that's an excellent point. I do a lot of business, most of our businesses primarily with franchise brands. And the biggest conversation always is unit level economics. What does this do for the unit level? So I think that is a very, very good point.
Yeah, because I could speak for my team in this process. Even the franchises are being audited at every single store level. If they have 800 stores, every single store comes through the audit individually. And every single piece of that audit is looked at. And if there's corrective action, that store gets that corrective action.
And that's common for all certifications, and it really has to be, right? So that's something that's a structure that's in place in order to make sure that then everybody, you know, acts and behaves the same way. And that's part of staying accountable in the structure that at any certification can bring you.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's a great, you know, opportunity to bring Ben into the conversation. You know, I noticed that your company was featured as a certified store in the presentation. How do you, as an owner, ensure with your team and your customers, you know, can you touch on what value you've seen, and then how also you make sure that your employees and your technicians actually respect what that certification means?
Sure. So, I mean, we have all of the WISE documents and marketing materials posted around our stores, behind the counters per se. So we do get a lot of questions about it as this is still being rolled out. Obviously, going through intake and outtake lists and making sure that all the boxes are checked and quality controlled during repairs is a good way to audit that. And then, just making sure that the customer is taken care of and that they actually know what exactly that means. I think if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something I wrote down because I was really intrigued about it. Michelle, on an earlier slide in the very beginning, you mentioned that we had a lot of, the entities, I think it was like 52 entities that were a part of building, a part of the leadership council that built this certification. And on that list of companies, and there was a lot, the cool thing was that I noticed we had like OEMs in there. We had Apple, we had Samsung, we had Google, we had carriers. Can you give us a little maybe of the background on why they got involved and maybe kind of what their vision is for what this can do for repair shops?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. So I don't know who all's on the line. So I don't know if our friends from Samsung or Apple or others are on the line, but I will just, do a shout out. I thought it would be easier to talk to Samsung in early days. Again, the meeting that Jeremy talked about going to New York City, I took 12 of us, 12 companies in the room with Samsung. At that time, they were doing mostly mail-in repair. They were mostly managing all of their reverse logistics out of 3 depots. I actually came from the OEM side of the house, 1996, 100 years ago. For a little company called Nokia. And I said, I have no idea how on earth does Samsung believe that they're going to be able to handle when the majority of this device is glass. How are they going to handle reverse logistics with no retail presence? I mean, Apple at least had retail presence, albeit, 287 stores in the US, still not enough to cover their market share in terms of population. But they had at least a different angle. So I said, let me go to Samsung first, because I have to imagine they have to be thinking about how they're going to solve for this big picture and long term. So to New York we went, and like Jeremy said, we told the story. This is what we want to do, and this is how I think this whole channel. There's not one. This is what I literally said. Jeremy will remember. I said, there's not one person sitting around the table who has 2 heads, who are actually in this business for a fast buck. Because quite honestly, I would do something completely different, because this is really hard, this business, with the limited access of all the right, whether it's parts, tools, process, trying to figure out how to be a service provider in a retail environment. And even the best brands on the planet usually fail at that. So how do we help support them? They can't do this without having the OEM at the table. So that day, and that day, the head of global reverse logistics turned around and said, okay, show us how we do it. How do we work with this channel? And that literally from that day, that actually said to the carriers, because I needed at least one OEM with me that says, yeah, I need to trust an alternative option for a channel. I don't know who, I don't know how this all works. They know how their process works, but they didn't really know fully how the rest of the program was working, or how other people were figuring it out in the absence of having all the right resources to do it, or guidance. And so that's when I said, well, let me go get the carriers. And the reason I wanted to get the carriers, not because they were actually super knee deep in repair, although some of them tried it over the course of a few years. They're the largest buyer of the OEM product. So they have a vested interest. And at the end of the day, without service on the device, this is just a really expensive paperweight. So they kind of go hand in hand. And their brand loyalty at the end of the day is still connected to whether or not that consumer has the device in working order. So let me get the two biggest, hardest groups together and figure out how, if this was meaningful enough for them to wrap their teams around it, give us some bandwidth in terms of people on their side who could help us develop a program in a room, and then tell us, can we solve this as an industry? And I'll remember the day, this is June 20th, 2017, a head of AT&T's reverse comes to me and says, oh, Michelle, this was a fantastic meeting. Thank you for pulling this together, as if I had just thought about it like yesterday. I was like, yeah, sure, no problem, Tony. He says, we've needed to do this for 10 years. We just needed someone to get us across the finish line to get started. So that's really how it all started. And then they brought their insurance providers. I brought everybody I knew from the Wireless Repair Expo days, because those were the brave souls that were willing to present themselves to the rest of the trade and say, this is what I'm doing to support this channel in terms of reverse logistics. And then we just started figuring out and then we had to figure out, how are we going to actually start building this? No one had ever built standards for this industry before. But at CTIA, we have people who interface with IEEE, that interface with 3GPP, that interface with lots of other standard setting bodies, right? ISO world, et cetera. How do we bring what CTIA can do in terms of structure and create a structure that maybe works in this environment? And that's literally how it all got started. And I will tell you, that was June, by early August, I called Apple and I said, we can't do this without you. And now I've got, at that point, I think I had 26 companies or 17 companies, whatever it was. I said, we're going to build this. And it was kind of it wasn't antagonistic. It was just like, we're going to go. It'd be really great if you were with us. And they literally, on the very first phone call, gave me 5 people to interface with to start building. They said, yep, we got to figure out how we can work with the channel. And now I've got Samsung and Apple and Motorola. I have to give a big shout out, super active in the conversations. Their market share is very different. Probably don't see as many Motorola devices coming through, but they invented the cell phone, for crying out loud, right? At the end of the day. And they've been super, super helpful, bringing in some of their, best practices relative to Six Sigma. Again, this all had to be grounded in engineering. It wasn't just about the business end play of it. It was about, how do we ground this so that the channel can trust itself, that we're actually attempting to try and do the right thing. And, I think people thought Apple would come in and just, be quiet in the meetings, and they weren't from day one. They are actually co-chairing 2 of the working groups. Do they have their own corporate governance? All the OEMs have their own corporate governance? Do the carriers have their own corporate governance? What they can and can't do? How far can they go? Yes, as should you as an independent business owner too. Like, you have things that you need to protect too. We find out where those guardrails are and we bake them into the program, and we get the best guidance we can for the better of the industry. They all check their agendas at the door. I love sitting Apple and Samsung right next to each other in a meeting. It's super good fun. And as a matter of fact, they're actually super, super professional with each other. It's amazing. And it's really a cool thing when you see everybody who's in the same job, even though they have a different logo on their business card, but they actually all have the same mission. And that's to take care of their consumer. But as an industry, we should have a best practice as to what is expected at a baseline, not your secret sauce. Apple's got their secret sauce. Samsung has their secret sauce. Batteries Plus does. Everybody does, as should you. But when it comes to the actual baseline recommendation in terms of how you approach the repair, the standard best practice for a technician, what a consumer should expect in a retail environment, there should be some baseline standards that are followed for the industry, but only decided by the industry. And that's how we got here.
That's awesome. Well, I know we're already running over time, and we still have a lot of open questions, but in the interest of everybody's schedule, I just want to commit that we will answer these questions in text format instead of answering live. But I do want to kind of throw it to the panel with one last opportunity to give us their perspective, since we have you here, which is, we've established, I think, that this is a great first start for the industry, and Michelle's already teased that there's going to be much more to come as we get more traction behind this and we get more partners on board to help promote it. What would each of you like to see in a future iteration of the certification? Just to demonstrate that we're already thinking about next steps and next level.
For me, it's communication on what they want from us. We want access, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what everybody always talks about. Like they see that obviously OEM approved companies have access to certain diagnostics or certain parts. Obviously, independents want that too, as well as the larger chains want that too. What I think I saw a lot of people commenting about was that, hey, is this going to be backed by the OEMs? And obviously Michelle said, yes, it is. But I can tell you that in my experience, what Michelle has brought everybody to the table. I mean, I would sit at a table, a small company like Inter Gadgets, next to the big guys like Apple and Samsung and LG and Motorola and T-Mobile and AT&T. And if I put in my input, they would listen. Like they were actually very curious to hear about how independent repair worked. And not only that, afterwards, I would be able to get their contacts. And I personally called up people from Apple and Samsung and Motorola and LG. And I have dialogue with these guys. And I'm sure a lot of people in these working groups have it as well. So obviously, I mean, this has been building for a few years. It's taken a lot of time, but it's because I think it's needed. And I think that there was a lot of clarity that needed to be put together for everybody to be on the same page. So yes, I think like Pedro said, independents want to know. Obviously, I think people were commenting that they don't see a lot of information on the WISE website yet. Michelle can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's probably coming really soon. I mean, I think everybody will get that information as they start joining it. And even if they don't join it, they'll see the information on the website most likely.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Yep.
Great. Anybody else from our panel want to chime in? No? Okay. Well, hey, I appreciate everybody's time. I think this was a great session, and I apologize if you asked a question, we didn't get to answer it live. I can promise you that we will be answering those in a text format after the webinar. And so just stay tuned. If you have further questions, you can always reach out to the WISE certification team from their website. And don't forget, obviously, that there is that promotional offer that you can take advantage of if you are interested in it. I want to thank again the CTIA team, Michelle and Marin, for joining us on this program. And especially Jeremy Willis. It's been a pleasure seeing all of you again. I think I heard that it might be Jeremy's birthday today, if that is not wrong. So a very big happy birthday to you. I won't embarrass you by singing happy birthday, but know that
I look good for 30, don't I? I've been old in this industry for a long time. When I started going into shops back like a decade ago, I was like, is your mom and dad here? I'm joking. I love you all.
Yeah,
I'm just saying you made me old a long time ago.
Yeah, so wrapping up, I mean, with that, we're going to conclude our first episode. We're intending to make this a series. CouchCon is basically meant to be an ongoing educational tool that you can use to listen in and learn about what's next in the industry. As the name implies, there's just a lot more to come. After this, we're going to release the recorded video for each of you to reflect on in the coming days. And in the early part of May, we're actually going to be already doing the next episode. We're going to talk about how to take your business in more unconventional directions and what you can do to gain that competitive advantage. Ahead of that, we also want to encourage you to submit your topic ideas to that theme. So if there's things specifically we should talk about next generation for repair, send it on over. And also, we want to hear about any participants you want us to get involved as well. Additionally, it's our goal to make this better over time. We had technical difficulties getting started, and I apologize for that, but it goes with the territory a little bit. So we are going to make it better, and just send over any feedback about formatting you'd like to see different next time. Once again, a reminder on that special offer for the WISE certification. And lastly, just a general thank you to the CTIA team, to all of our panelists, to all of our participants. Thank you for your time. This is really exciting to see come together, and I'm excited to see what we do next as an industry.
Awesome.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, everybody.